The conference room lights were bright enough to hurt. I sat in the third seat on the left side of the long table. In front of me was a cup of tea that had gone completely cold. The shareholders walked in one after another, their footsteps striking the hardwood floor in a dull, heavy rhythm. Richard Cole, one of the major shareholders, sat across from me. His suit was sharp, his tie perfectly knotted. His eyes swept over me, and there was a faint smile at the corner of his mouth. My wife, Evelyn Whitmore, sat at the head of the table, flipping through a stack of documents. Today she wore a navy blue business suit. Her hair was pinned up, exposing her long, elegant neck. In the 3 years since we got married, she had never looked at me like this in the company. Cold, distant, as if she were looking at a stranger. The conference room door opened again. The person who walked in made my fingers tighten around the teacup without warning. Preston Vale. He wore a light gray casual suit. His hair was styled perfectly, and a polished smile sat on his face. He nodded at Evelyn, then took a seat diagonally across from me. Evelyn's gaze paused on him for 2 seconds. I knew that look too well. 3 years ago, that was how she had looked at me. Everyone is here, Evelyn said, her voice cool. This emergency shareholders meeting has one main item on the agenda. She placed the stack of documents on the table and pushed it toward the center. I've decided to transfer the 42% founding shares under my name to Mr. Preston Vale. The conference room went silent for 3 seconds. I heard my own breathing grow heavy. Evelyn, what did you just say? I stood up, and the chair scraped against the floor with an ear-piercing sound. Evelyn did not look at me. The share transfer agreement has already been drafted. I invited all of you here today to witness it. Are you insane? My voice echoed through the room. That is marital property. What right do you have to decide on your own? Evelyn finally raised her head. Her gaze stabbed toward me like an ice pick. Marital property. She gave a cold laugh. Ethan Whitaker. Get one thing straight. Those shares were given to you by the Whitmore family from the beginning. My father gave you those shares because you were my husband. Now I'm no longer willing to let you keep them. I'm taking them back. Richard Cole coughed lightly beside her. Ms. Whitmore, procedurally. There is no procedural issue. Evelyn cut him off. The shares are under my name. I have the right to dispose of them. I clenched my fists. My nails dug into my palms, bringing a sharp sting. Evelyn Whitmore. After 3 years of marriage. Is this how you treat me? Marriage. Evelyn stood, both hands braced against the tabletop. Ethan Whitaker. Do you even deserve to talk to me about marriage? What have you done at this company for the past 3 years? Did you negotiate the projects? Did you maintain the clients? Did you deliver the revenue? Every day, you sit in an office, holding the shares my father gave you, comfortably playing your role as vice president. What right do you have to talk to me about marriage? My lips moved. I wanted to say something, but found that I could not say a word. Her words were knives, cutting into my heart one slice at a time. Preston sat there, the smile on his face never disappearing. He slowly lifted his teacup, took a sip, then set it down. His fingers tapped lightly on the table twice. Ms. Whitmore, Mr. Whitaker may need some time to process the news. His voice was gentle, like he was trying to smooth things over. But I could hear the smugness hidden inside it. Evelyn looked at him, and her gaze softened. Preston, you don't need to speak for him. Then she looked back at me, her expression returning to that cold indifference. Ethan Whitaker. The agreement is here. Sign it. From today on. Other than that marriage certificate, there is nothing between you and me. I stared at the agreement on the table. Black words on white paper. The terms were clear. The 42% shares under my name would all be transferred to Preston Vale for no compensation. No compensation. Those 2 words burned into my eyes like a branding iron. I won't sign. I lifted my head and said each word clearly. Evelyn Whitmore. I do not agree. Evelyn's face changed. You don't agree. Her voice rose. Ethan Whitaker. Who do you think you are? What gives you the right to disagree? For 3 years. You ate the Whitmore family's food. Used the Whitmore family's money. Lived in the Whitmore family's home. Your car. Your house. Your position. Which one of them wasn't given to you by the Whitmore family? Now that I'm taking them back, you tell me you don't agree. She walked up to me and stood very close. I could smell the familiar perfume on her. But in that moment, even that scent felt strange. You don't like it? She stared into my eyes. Her voice slow and cutting. Then leave. Everyone in the conference room was looking at me. Richard Cole lowered his head and checked his phone. The other two minority shareholders exchanged a glance. Preston leaned back in his chair, hands crossed over his stomach. He watched me as if he were watching a show. My heart pounded violently in my chest. Anger, humiliation, unwillingness. Every emotion tangled together. I wanted to flip the table. I wanted to roar back at her. But I knew doing that would only make me look more pathetic. I took a deep breath. Evelyn froze. What are you laughing at? I turned and looked at Richard Cole sitting at the other end of the table. Mr. Cole, do you remember the dinner we had 3 months ago at Riverfront Tower? Evelyn frowned. Ethan Whitaker. What are you talking about? My eyes stayed on Richard's face. That day, you said something to me. You said a person should always leave 3 parts mercy for others and 7 parts backup plan for himself. Do you still remember that? Richard's pupils tightened slightly. The smile on Preston's face froze. Evelyn looked at me. Then at Richard. Her brows drawing even tighter. Ethan Whitaker. What exactly are you trying to say? I reached out and picked up the agreement on the table. Under her shocked gaze, I slowly tore that agreement in half. You. Evelyn's face turned livid. Evelyn Whitmore. You just said those shares were given to me by the Whitmore family. You're wrong. Those shares never belonged to the Whitmore family. Evelyn froze. Preston abruptly stood. I lifted my head and looked at Evelyn. You just told me that if I didn't like it, I should leave. Now I'm returning those words to you. Are you leaving? Evelyn's lips trembled. Her hands pressed against the table. Her knuckles turning white. Where did you get that? Where I got it doesn't matter. What matters is that it says everything clearly. 42% of Whitmore Group's founding shares are held under my name. Ethan Whitaker. Not Evelyn Whitmore's. And definitely not the Whitmore family's. Preston stood from his seat. Ethan Whitaker. Stop spouting nonsense. Everyone knows Whitmore Group belongs to the Whitmore family. You're an outsider. How could you possibly own 42% of the shares? Mr. Vale. How long have you known the Whitmore family? Preston froze. What does that have to do with you? Less than half a year. Right. Then do you know how Whitmore Group was founded? Preston did not speak. His eyes drifted toward Evelyn. Evelyn stood there as if someone had pulled the bones out of her body. Evelyn. Do you want to tell him? Or should I? I looked at her. Richard Cole coughed and stood. Ms. Whitmore, Mr. Whitaker. Perhaps we shareholders should step out for a moment. No need. Evelyn finally spoke. Everyone sit. Whatever should be known will be known today. Richard and the other 2 shareholders exchanged a glance. Then sat back down. Preston was still standing. Evelyn raised her head and looked at me. Ethan Whitaker. When did you find out? 3 months ago. The day Mr. Cole and I had dinner at Riverfront Tower. That afternoon. I received documents from Uncle Frederick. Evelyn's body shook slightly. Uncle Frederick. Yes. Frederick Lawson. Your father's best friend while he was alive. And the earliest partner of Whitmore Group. He sent me a file. Inside was the agreement your father signed with him years ago. 20 years ago. Your father, Robert Whitmore, and Frederick Lawson founded Whitmore Group together. Each contributed half the capital. Each owned half the shares. But inside that agreement was a special clause. Mr. Robert Whitmore and Mr. Frederick Lawson jointly agreed. I read aloud. Both parties must complete the transfer of their shares during their lifetimes. The transferee must be the heir each party personally chooses. If, after one party's death, that party's heir fails to fulfill corresponding operational and management responsibilities, the other party has the right to recover the shares held by that heir. I stopped and looked at Evelyn. Do you know why Uncle Frederick transferred his shares to me? Evelyn did not speak. Because the heir your father chose was never you. The heir your father chose was me. Richard Cole shot to his feet. His chair slammed into the wall. The 2 minority shareholders looked at each other. Shock written all over their faces. Preston's face went completely pale. Impossible. Evelyn stood. Her voice sharp. How could my father give the shares to you? You only married me 3 years ago. My father only knew you for 5 years. Ethan Whitaker. You're lying. That agreement must be forged. Evelyn. Sit down. I'll explain slowly. Evelyn did not sit. 14 years ago. Your father went south to negotiate a project and got into a car accident. His car rolled into a ravine. He was badly injured and trapped inside. I was the one who pulled him out. Evelyn's expression stiffened. That year, I was 19 and working on a construction site. I passed that road and saw a car flipped in a ditch. I jumped down, smashed the window, and dragged your father out. Then I carried him 3 miles before I found a small clinic. Your father spent 2 months in the hospital. For those 2 months, I took care of him. After he recovered, he asked me what reward I wanted. I said I wanted nothing. Saving someone wasn't about repayment. Your father said he valued my character. He sent me to college and paid my tuition. I studied business administration for 4 years. Then joined Whitmore Group after graduation. I started at the bottom and worked my way up to where I am today. I looked at Evelyn's increasingly pale face. You always thought your father gave me the shares because I married you. That was never true. Your father made his will 5 years ago and transferred the shares to me. His only condition was. I paused. I had to marry you. Evelyn looked as if she had been struck by lightning. Preston reached out to support her. But she shoved him away. You lied to me. You lied to me this whole time. I didn't lie to you. I only didn't tell you the whole truth. Your father said you had been spoiled since childhood. You were impulsive. Easily used by others. He was afraid that if he gave the shares directly to you, you would destroy the company. So he asked me to marry you, take care of you, and guard this family business for you. Evelyn raised her hand and covered her mouth. So our marriage was a transaction from beginning to end. At the beginning. Yes. But later. No. Evelyn lowered her hand and looked at me. Later. No. Then why didn't you tell me? Why didn't you tell me the truth? Because I didn't know how to say it. And because before your father died, he made me promise him one thing. What? He made me promise to keep this secret for at least 10 years. He said that after 10 years, when you were mature and capable of carrying this family business, I could tell you. I lowered my head and looked at the yellowing agreement on the table. It has only been 5 years. Preston stood there, his face alternating between green and white. Richard Cole coughed, breaking the silence. Mr. Whitaker. Is this agreement real? Mr. Frederick Lawson has the original. You can verify it at any time. Richard was silent for a moment. Then he slowly said. So that means Ms. Whitmore's attempt to transfer the shares today has no legal effect. Because from the beginning, that 42% never belonged to her. I glanced at Evelyn. Yes. Richard leaned back in his chair and let out a long breath. The 2 minority shareholders began whispering. Then Preston suddenly spoke. Ms. Whitmore, did you invite me here today just to watch you embarrass yourself? Evelyn's head snapped up. What did you say? Preston gave a cold laugh. I asked whether you invited me here just to let me watch your husband play you like a fool. You kept saying you would transfer the shares to me. Turns out those shares were never yours. Evelyn Whitmore. What are you going to transfer to me? What are you going to use to fulfill your promise to me? Evelyn's face turned deathly white. I stood and stepped in front of her. Mr. Vale. Mind your words. I stared into Preston's eyes. Ethan Whitaker. Don't pretend to be the good guy. You lied to her for 5 years. And now you're here protecting her. You two really are made for each other. One liar. One fool. Richard Cole stood and walked to Preston. Mr. Vale. This is a shareholders' meeting. Please leave. Preston looked at him. Then at me. And finally at Evelyn. Evelyn Whitmore. Remember this. You owe me. Evelyn stood there like a statue. Richard and the other 2 shareholders quietly gathered their things and left the conference room. Only Evelyn and I remained. Evelyn stood with her back to me. Evelyn. Ethan Whitaker. Tell me what you were thinking these past 3 months. Were you thinking? This woman is finally showing her true colors. Were you thinking? The Whitmore daughter really is an idiot. Were you thinking? My plan finally succeeded. I wasn't. You weren't. Then tell me why you hid it from me. Why did you choose today? In front of all the shareholders. To bring those things out. Why didn't you tell me beforehand? Do you know how humiliated I was today? Do you know how much I looked like a joke? Evelyn slammed the door and left. I stood in the conference room, looking at the torn pieces of the agreement on the table. Slowly, I placed the yellowed agreement into my briefcase. My phone screen showed a name. Frederick Lawson. Uncle Frederick. Ethan. Is it done? It's done. Frederick was silent for a few seconds. How did Evelyn react? Very badly. Frederick sighed. I expected that. Robert left too early. Evelyn was spoiled by her mother since childhood. She's impatient and acts without thinking. You've pampered her these past few years. So she became bold enough to do anything. Frederick continued. Ethan. I know you feel terrible. But stay steady. This isn't over yet. That boy Preston Vale won't let this go. I know. Uncle Frederick. Who exactly is Preston Vale? Frederick's voice lowered. Have you investigated him? Yes. On the surface. He's a partner at an investment firm. He started doing business with Whitmore Group last year. And in reality? Frederick asked. In reality, his investment firm is an empty shell. I had someone check their accounts. Over the past 3 years, that company hasn't made a single real investment. All the money moving through it came from offshore accounts. And the source of the funds is unclear. Frederick laughed softly over the phone. Ethan. You truly didn't disappoint me. Robert chose you for a reason. Preston Vale's real identity is that he works for Everstone Group. Everstone Group. Whitmore Group's biggest competitor. For the past 10 years, the two companies had fought across the building materials market, real estate projects, and supply chains. When Robert Whitmore was alive, he publicly said that as long as he lived, Whitmore Group would never cooperate with Everstone. Preston Vale is the illegitimate son of Charles Mercer, the chairman of Everstone Group, Frederick said, his tone calm and emotionless. No more than 5 people in the circle know this. Charles Mercer has never acknowledged that son. But Preston has been working for Everstone all these years. He approached Evelyn for one purpose. To get Whitmore Group's shares through her and help Everstone swallow Whitmore Group. Uncle Frederick. Why are you telling me only now? Because I needed to confirm one thing. Confirm what? Whether you stand with Whitmore Group. Or whether you stand only with Evelyn. Frederick's voice became serious. Ethan. Over these 5 years, you've indulged Evelyn in everything. Whatever she said. You agreed. Whatever she did. You supported. I've been watching you. I was afraid that to please her, you would even sacrifice Whitmore Group's future. Frederick was right. For the past 5 years, I had treated Evelyn too well. Uncle Frederick. I understand. What should I do next? Frederick's voice became steady again. Next Wednesday, Whitmore Group and Everstone Group have a project coordination meeting. You will attend on behalf of Whitmore. Me. What about Evelyn? Don't worry about Evelyn. Frederick interrupted. She'll go. Before I could ask why, Frederick had already hung up. When the elevator doors opened, I saw Richard Cole. Mr. Whitaker. Can we talk? We went to the coffee shop downstairs. Richard chose a corner seat by the window, facing the door. Mr. Whitaker. I've followed Mr. Whitmore for 30 years and you for 5. What do you think Whitmore Group's biggest problem is right now? Whitmore Group's biggest problem is chaotic internal management. In the 3 years since Evelyn took over, the company has changed 4 CFOs and 6 marketing directors. She hires based entirely on personal preference and refuses to listen to other opinions. Last year, company performance dropped 37%. She didn't reflect on her management style. Instead, she blamed the market environment. Richard nodded, signaling for me to continue. More seriously, she has no judgment when it comes to loyalty. I set down my cup and looked at Richard. Take Preston Vale. He only started interacting with Whitmore last year. And Evelyn already treats him as a confidant. She even wanted to transfer shares to him. Mr. Cole. How far can a company go under a leader who can casually give away core shares to an outsider? Mr. Whitaker. If I support you, can you promise to put Whitmore Group back on track? Richard Cole was Whitmore Group's second largest shareholder, holding 18%. If he supported me, Then combined with Frederick's 42% transferred to me, I would control an absolute majority of Whitmore Group. Mr. Cole. Why are you willing to support me? Richard smiled. Because I've figured it out. Mr. Whitmore chose you for a reason. You understand business better than his daughter. And you care more about this company than she does. I won't stake my entire life's worth on an emotional young woman. On the business card were 3 words. Charles Mercer. Below them was a line. Chairman. Everstone Group. This is. Richard's expression turned heavy. 3 days ago, Charles Mercer's secretary came to see me personally. He offered a very high price to buy my 18% shares. I refused. This line was written by his secretary in front of me. Whitmore won't survive this quarter. Charles Mercer is also secretly acquiring Whitmore's shares. Richard nodded. Not just me. He has also had people contact the other 2 minority shareholders. They're still hesitating. But I estimate they won't hold out much longer. Mr. Whitaker. Your 42% plus my 18% is exactly 60%. The remaining 40% is in the hands of those 2 minority shareholders and other retail shareholders. If Charles Mercer gets those shares first, he'll have the capital to fight you. Mr. Cole. Can you help me arrange a meeting with those 2 minority shareholders? Richard looked at me. Then nodded. Yes. Tomorrow night. I'll set it up. Mr. Whitaker. There is one thing I must remind you of. Charles Mercer is ruthless. He will do whatever it takes. If you fight him, be mentally prepared. I took out my phone and called Evelyn. Evelyn. Where are you? We need to talk. No need. I'm moving back to my mother's place tomorrow. I'll have my lawyer send you the divorce agreement. I won't sign. Then I turned and walked back toward the company. The next afternoon, I received Richard's call. Mr. Whitaker. 7 o'clock tonight. Private room on the 3rd floor of Riverfront Tower. It's arranged. The 2 minority shareholders agreed to come. But Mr. Baker is still hesitant. You'll need to spend more effort on him. I pulled up Whitmore Group's financial reports from the past 3 years and reviewed them page by page. In the 3rd quarter of last year, there was an expense of $555,000. Marked as marketing promotion fee. I searched through all reimbursement documents and found only one payment application signed by Preston Vale. The payee was a company called Brightline Culture. I opened my laptop and checked the company. The business registry showed that Brightline Culture had been registered 2 years ago, with registered capital of $75,000. The legal representative of the company was Preston Vale. Evelyn had not only tried to give Preston shares, she had used company money to feed Preston's private company. $555,000 was not a small amount. For a company that had already lost money last year, it was pouring salt into the wound. Director Miller. Please send me the full breakdown of all marketing expenses from the 3rd quarter of last year. Mr. Whitaker. Ms. Whitmore already signed off on those expenses. Do you think? Because Ms. Whitmore signed them. I can't look. I am now the company's largest shareholder. I have the right to review all financial data. Director Miller. You've worked at Whitmore for 12 years. You were here when Mr. Whitmore was alive. You should know what should and should not be done. Mr. Whitaker. I understand. I'll send it to your email within 10 minutes. Evelyn's face. Preston's face. Frederick's face. And Richard's face flashed through my mind one after another. I remembered the first time I met Evelyn 5 years ago. It was Robert Whitmore's birthday dinner, held in the largest private room at Riverfront Tower. Evelyn wore a white dress, her hair loose over her shoulders. When she smiled, her eyes curved beautifully. So you're the Ethan Whitaker my dad keeps talking about. You're actually pretty decent looking. She saw my ears turn red and laughed even more happily. Don't be nervous. I'm very easy to get along with. She spent money without restraint. She could max out a credit card in 3 days. She drove recklessly and scraped her car 3 times in 1 year. Before Robert died, he held my hand and said one thing. Ethan. Evelyn is not bad at heart. She's just too spoiled and too willful. Promise me, no matter what she does in the future, you'll tolerate her. But this was no small tantrum. This was a kind of willfulness that could bury all of Whitmore Group. $555,000 had been split into 12 payments. Every payee was Brightline Culture. Every payment note said marketing promotion service fee. There were only payment request forms, each carrying Preston Vale's signature and Evelyn Whitmore's signature. In the private room, Richard had already arrived. One man was slightly overweight, wearing gold-rimmed glasses. That was Leonard Baker. The other was tall and thin, his hair combed perfectly. That was Walter Brooks. Each held 11% of Whitmore Group's shares. "Mr. Whitaker is here." Richard smiled and invited me to sit. Leonard poured me a glass of wine and pushed it over. "Mr. Whitaker. It's been a while. Have a drink first to warm up." "Mr. Baker. Mr. Brooks. I invited both of you here today to discuss something." Walter set down his chopsticks and looked at me. "What do you want to discuss?" "Mr. Whitaker. Please look at this first." Leonard picked up the stack of papers and flipped through a few pages. His expression changed. Walter took it and read, then frowned. "What is this?" Leonard set the papers on the table and removed his glasses to wipe them. "Mr. Whitaker. These are company financial documents. How did you? How I got them doesn't matter. What matters is that you should look at where this $555,000 went." Walter said nothing. He only turned through the forms one page at a time. "The legal representative of Brightline Culture is Preston Vale." "Yes. Preston Vale. The same man Evelyn wanted to transfer shares to today. And also the illegitimate son of Charles Mercer, chairman of Everstone Group." The teacup in Leonard's hand fell onto the table with a sharp crack. "What did you say?" "Preston Vale is Charles Mercer's illegitimate son." Walter's expression also changed. "No wonder." "No wonder what?" Richard asked. Walter lifted his head and looked at us. 3 days ago, Charles Mercer's secretary also came to see me. He offered $3 million for my 11% shares. Did you agree?" Walter shook his head. "I said I would consider it. The price he offered was indeed high, 30% above market value. But I felt something was off. So I didn't agree on the spot." Leonard grabbed a napkin and wiped the spilled tea on the table, his hands still shaking. "He came to me too. Same offer. $3 million. He paused, as if making a very difficult decision. "I already verbally agreed." Richard set down his glass and looked at Leonard. "Leonard, how could you agree to him?" Leonard's face flushed red. "What else could I do? Whitmore Group's performance has gotten worse every year. Dividends keep shrinking. My son is studying overseas. Tuition and living expenses are $120,000 a year. $3 million is more than I can earn in a lifetime. If Charles Mercer offers that price, why shouldn't I sell?" Walter patted his shoulder. "Leonard, calm down." Leonard lifted his wine glass and drained it in one gulp. "Mr. Baker. You're right. Whitmore has indeed struggled these past 2 years. But have you thought about why Charles Mercer is willing to spend $3 million on your shares?" Leonard did not speak. "Because his goal isn't to buy shares. It's to swallow Whitmore Group. Everstone and Whitmore have fought for 10 years. They couldn't win in direct competition when Mr. Whitmore was alive. They never gained an advantage. Now that Mr. Whitmore is gone, they want to control Whitmore through share acquisitions. Once Whitmore is controlled by Everstone, what do you think Charles Mercer will do?" Leonard lifted his head and looked at me. "He'll swallow Whitmore's brand, channels, and clients. Then erase the Whitmore name completely. By then, Mr. Whitmore's lifetime of work will be gone. Yes, you'll receive $3 million for your shares. But do you think you'll sleep well with that money?" Leonard's eyes reddened. "Mr. Whitaker. I followed Mr. Whitmore for 30 years. When he started the business, he didn't even have a proper office. I squeezed into a rental unit with him, 2 people sharing one desk. When he passed away, I promised him I would help protect Whitmore. I was confused. I failed him. Mr. Whitaker. I won't sell. I'll reject Charles Mercer." But Walter spoke. "Mr. Whitaker. Do you have proof that Preston Vale is Charles Mercer's illegitimate son?" He was much harder to convince than Leonard. Without solid evidence, he would not easily believe anyone. "Yes." Walter took the photos and looked at them one by one. In the first photo, Preston Vale and Charles Mercer sat facing each other in a private restaurant room. In the second, the two walked out together, Charles's hand resting on Preston's shoulder. The third was a copy of a birth certificate, In the father field was Charles Mercer. In the mother field was an unfamiliar name. Walter set the photos down. His expression became complicated. Where did you get these? Frederick Lawson. Uncle Frederick has had people watching Preston. These were taken by his people. Mr. Whitaker. With your shares. Mr. Cole's shares. And both Leonard's and mine. Whitmore will be secure. I'm with you. Leonard had drunk quite a bit. His face was red as a boiled shrimp. He grabbed my hand and rambled about the early days of building the company with Robert Whitmore. Walter and Richard helped him out and called a driver to take him home. I took out my phone and opened Evelyn's number. A message came in. Ethan Whitaker. If you touch my people, I'll make you pay. Then I called Frederick. Uncle Frederick. Preston may be about to act. Frederick's voice was heavy. What message did you receive? After I told him. He was silent for a moment. Ethan. Listen to me. From now on. Be careful with everything around you. Charles Mercer doesn't play by rules. If he really wants to hurt you, he can do anything. For 3 straight days. Evelyn did not come home. My mother-in-law, Margaret Whitmore, lived in a villa district on the east side of the city. It was a house Robert had bought when he was alive. Margaret opened the door. What are you doing here? Mom. I'm looking for Evelyn. She's not here. Margaret moved to close the door. Mom. Let me see her. I have something to say to her. Margaret looked at me. Disgust in her eyes. Ethan Whitaker. You still have the face to come here. You humiliated Evelyn in front of all the shareholders and made it impossible for her to hold her head up. And now you say you have something to say to her. Why don't you just say you want to keep bullying her? Mom. It isn't what you think. Not what I think. Margaret gave a cold laugh. Evelyn told me everything. You took out a forged agreement and claimed Whitmore's shares were yours. Ethan Whitaker. Have you looked in a mirror? Who do you think you are? Back then, Robert pitted you and picked you up from a construction site. He paid for your college. Gave you a job. Even married his daughter to you. And what did you do? You repaid kindness with betrayal and tried to steal the Whitmore family's assets. You are an ungrateful wolf. Evelyn appeared at the top of the stairs. Mom. Let him come up. Margaret turned back to look at her. Evelyn. You. Let him come up. Evelyn repeated. Then turned back into her room. Margaret reluctantly stepped aside. Evelyn's room was at the end of the hallway on the 2nd floor. Ethan Whitaker. Why are you here? I want to talk to you. Talk about what? About how you lied to me for 5 years. About how you embarrassed me in front of everyone. Or about how you planned to kick me out of Whitmore. Evelyn. I didn't lie to you. I only didn't tell you the whole truth. Your father didn't let me say it because he wanted to protect you. Evelyn laughed. Protect me. Keeping me in the dark and making me look like an idiot is protecting me. Letting me embarrass myself at the shareholders' meeting so everyone could laugh at me. That's protecting me. Margaret called from downstairs. Evelyn. What happened? Evelyn took a deep breath and calmed herself. Nothing. Mom. Ethan Whitaker. I'll ask you one last thing. Did you marry me because you liked me? Or because of my father's arrangement? That question had haunted me for 5 years. In the beginning, it truly had been because of Robert's arrangement. But after that wedding, every day I lived with her. I slowly and truly fell in love with her. Evelyn watched my silence and nodded. I understand. You can go. I'll have my lawyer send you the divorce papers. Evelyn. I won't sign. Evelyn did not look back. Whether you sign is your business. But I won't live with you anymore. Ethan Whitaker. Do you know what I hate most about you? It isn't that you lied to me. It isn't that you embarrassed me. It's that you made me unable to tell which parts of the past 5 years were real and which parts were an act. Leave. When I walked downstairs, Margaret stood in the living room with her arms crossed, looking at me coldly. Ethan Whitaker. Remember this. From today on, you are no longer the Whitmore family's son-in-law. Don't come looking for Evelyn again. I drove back to the company. On the way, Frederick called. Ethan. You're not at the company. I stepped out. I'm on my way back. Something happened. Frederick was silent for a few seconds. Preston Vale went to the state corporate registry an hour ago. What for? He applied to freeze all share transfers involving Whitmore Group. Frederick's voice sank. He claimed there is a dispute over Whitmore's shares and requested that the registry suspend all share transfer procedures. If the freeze is approved, your shares can't move temporarily. And neither can his. He's trying to stall me. Yes. Frederick said. Only by stalling you can he buy Charles Mercer time to continue buying shares from the other shareholders. Ethan. You must complete all share consolidation before the freeze takes effect. How long does approval take? Fastest. Tomorrow afternoon. Frederick said. You have 1.5 days. The car moved through city traffic. I placed my phone on the mount and called Walter Brooks. Mr. Brooks. Are the share transfer procedures completed? Walter's voice came from the other end. They're being processed. I'm at the registry now. Speed it up. Preston Vale has applied for a share freeze. It may take effect by tomorrow afternoon at the latest. If we don't finish before then, the entire plan is ruined. Walter was silent for a few seconds. Then said, I understand. I'll have them expedited immediately. After hanging up, I called Leonard Baker. Leonard's voice sounded wrong. Mr. Whitaker. Mr. Baker. What happened? Then Leonard spoke. His voice carrying tears. Mr. Whitaker. I'm sorry. He stopped. What happened? Charles Mercer's people came to me this morning. Leonard said. They found my son in Sydney. They said if I didn't sell them my shares, my son might run into trouble over there. They threatened you. Did you agree? Leonard's voice trembled. Mr. Whitaker. I had no choice. He's my only son. I can give up anything. But I can't let something happen to him. Mr. Baker. I understand. But promise me you won't sign any documents for now. Give me 1 day. I'll find a way. Fine. 1 day. Mr. Whitaker. I'll give you 1 day. Charles Mercer had made his move. He wanted not only to buy shares, but to use threats. If Leonard's shares fell into Charles's hands, combined with Preston's, plus whatever shares Charles might have secretly acquired, Whitmore Group's control would truly be in danger. No matter what, I had to return to the company first. Some things had to be discussed with Frederick in person. When the car reached the company building, I saw a black sedan parked at the entrance. Mr. Whitaker. Hello. My name is Charles Mercer. Mr. Whitaker. You are a smart man. A smart man should know when to advance and when to retreat. I'm taking Whitmore Group. The shares in your hands. I can buy them at a high price. Name your price. I won't bargain. But if you keep opposing me. He paused and pushed up his glasses. The people who are good to you may suffer because of you. Think carefully. Mr. Whitaker. When I entered the company building, the young woman at the front desk froze when she saw my face. I had not shaved for 3 days. Frederick sat on the sofa. A cup of untouched tea in front of him. Get Attorney Evans to my office immediately. Frederick walked toward me. What happened? I leaned against the desk and told him about running into Charles downstairs. Frederick's brows tightened. He threatened you. That means he's anxious. What do you mean? Frederick lifted the teacup but did not drink. Charles Mercer values efficiency. If he were completely certain he could swallow Whitmore, he wouldn't come to you personally. Much less use a low-level threat. The fact that he came to you means something in his plan has gone wrong. Attorney Evans pushed open the door and came in. Attorney Evans. Show me Leonard Baker's share transfer agreement. Attorney Evans pulled a document from his briefcase and handed it to me. This agreement had been drafted 3 days ago. And Leonard had already signed it. If Leonard changes his mind now, does this agreement still have legal effect? Attorney Evans pushed up his glasses. The agreement has been signed and is legally binding. But if Leonard claims he signed it under duress, the court may find the agreement invalid. Frederick set down the teacup and looked at me. Ethan. What are you planning? Leonard has only 1 son. That's his weakness. Charles grabbed that weakness and forced him to submit. If I want to keep Leonard's shares, I have to deal with that weakness first. Frederick asked. How? Jared Quinn was my college classmate. After graduation, he went to Australia and opened a law firm in Sydney. Ethan. Long time no see. What made you call me? Jared. I need a favor. I briefly told him about Leonard's son. Ethan. This kind of thing isn't unheard of in Sydney. Threatening the personal safety of an international student is a serious criminal matter under Australian law. If the evidence is solid, police can open an investigation. But the problem now is evidence. When Charles Mercer's people threatened Leonard, they definitely left nothing in writing. No recording. No text messages. No emails. Based only on Leonard's verbal statement, it will be difficult for police to open a case. Frederick listened beside me, his expression growing more and more serious. But there is one way. What way? Have Leonard's son call the police himself and say he's being followed and fears for his safety. As long as police receive a report, they will respond and investigate. Once police are involved, those people won't dare act recklessly, because any further threat will become evidence in the investigation. That can work. But will Leonard's son cooperate? Have Leonard call his son and give him my contact information. I can help him handle it from my side anytime. Then I called Leonard. His voice sounded exhausted. Mr. Whitaker. Mr. Baker. Listen to me. Have your son call the police immediately. Tell them he is being followed and feels his personal safety is threatened. Then give him the contact information of an attorney named Jared Quinn. The lawyer will help him handle it. Leonard was silent for a while. Will that work? It will. Charles Mercer's people don't dare cause trouble in Australia. They're only trying to scare you. Once police get involved, they'll withdraw. Okay. I'll call my son right away. Attorney Evans looked at me with a hint of admiration. Ethan. That was a good move. But Charles Mercer won't let this go. Once Leonard's issue is solved, he'll attack somewhere else. I know. So we must get all the cards in our hands before he does. I looked at Attorney Evans. How are Walter Brooks's share transfer procedures? The registry is expediting them. They should be completed by tomorrow morning at the latest. What about Preston? What stage is his freeze application at? Attorney Evans took out a file from his briefcase and opened it. The freeze application has been submitted and is currently under review. Under normal procedure, review takes 1 to 3 business days. But Charles Mercer has connections at the registry. They may speed it up. Frederick stood and walked to the window, looking at the city outside. In other words, we must complete all share consolidation before the freeze takes effect. Ethan, once we combine your shares, Richard's, Walter's, and Leonard's, what's the total? 82%. Frederick nodded. Absolute control. As long as those shares are fully consolidated, no matter how Preston Vale and Charles Mercer struggle, they won't turn the sky upside down. My screen showed Leonard's name. Mr. Baker. How did it go? Leonard sounded much more relaxed than before. Mr. Whitaker. My son called the police. The Sydney police responded quickly and went to his school to take his statement. He said the people following him disappeared this afternoon. That's good. Leonard paused, his voice choking slightly. Mr. Whitaker. Thank you. I, Leonard Baker, owe you a huge favor for the rest of my life. As for the shares, I absolutely won't go back on my word. Mr. Baker. You don't need to thank me. We're all doing this for Whitmore. After hanging up, I told Frederick and Attorney Evans the result. A smile finally appeared on Frederick's face. But Attorney Evans's expression remained heavy. Mr. Whitaker. There is one thing I must remind you of. What? Preston Vale is not only the legal representative of Brightline Culture. He is also the actual controller behind 7 Whitmore Group projects over the past 2 years. The total amount of those 7 projects exceeds $3 million. Preston had used Project Cooperation as a cover to transfer Whitmore Group's funds into shell companies under his name. Those shell companies were not limited to Brightline Culture. There were 3 others, all registered under Preston or people connected to him. Does Evelyn know about this? Attorney Evans shook his head. I'm not sure. But every payment request for those projects was signed by Ms. Whitmore. Frederick walked over, picked up the file, and flipped through several pages. His expression grew uglier and uglier. That snake Preston wrapped himself around Whitmore last year. Evelyn was sold and still helped him count the money. Frederick asked, "Where are you going?" "To find Evelyn. She has to know this." Frederick stopped me. "Ethan. Are you sure she'll believe you?" Frederick was right. On the drive to Margaret Whitmore's villa, I kept thinking about how to start. If I directly told Evelyn that Preston had deceived her, she would never believe me. If I threw the evidence in front of her, she might think I forged it. I had to make her realize the problem herself before she could say the words "I don't believe you." Margaret opened the door. "Why are you here again?" "I'm looking for Evelyn. It's important." Margaret blocked the doorway, showing no intention of stepping aside. "Evelyn doesn't want to see you." At that moment, Evelyn's voice came from upstairs. "Mom. Let him in." Margaret looked upstairs, then at me, and reluctantly stepped aside. I walked into the living room. Evelyn came down the stairs. "What are you here for now? Look at this." Evelyn did not move. "What is it?" "A breakdown of the money Preston Vale moved out of Whitmore Group over the past 2 years." Evelyn's expression changed. "Where did you get it?" "Finance department." Evelyn closed the file and threw it back onto the coffee table. "I signed off on these projects." "What's the problem?" "Evelyn. Look carefully at these projects. This project was signed last July. Contract amount, $570,000. Payee, Brightline Culture. The content was brand promotion. But up to now, Whitmore Group has not received one promotion plan. Not one effectiveness report. Not one result. Don't you think that's strange?" Evelyn did not speak. "And this one? Signed last October. Contract amount, $330,000. Payee, Vale Media. The legal representative of this company is also Preston Vale. The project content was market research. Where is the research report? Have you seen it?" Evelyn's hand tightened on the armrest of the sofa. 7 months. A total of $3.2 million transferred out. All of that money went into Preston Vale's pocket. And from beginning to end. You were helping him sign it away. Evelyn shot to her feet. "Enough." Margaret poked her head out from the kitchen. "Worry moving between us." Evelyn stood there, her chest rising and falling violently. Margaret walked out of the kitchen and stood beside Evelyn, taking her hand. "Evelyn, don't listen to his nonsense. I know what kind of person Preston Vale is. He can't possibly be a scammer." Evelyn shook off Margaret's hand. "Mom. Stay out of it." Ethan Whitaker. "Do you think I'll believe you just because you brought out these papers? You can make these documents at any print shop. You want to use these things to drive a wedge between me and Preston. Do you think I'm that easy to fool?" What she really meant was that if she believed it, then in front of all the shareholders and the entire company, she had become a joke. "Evelyn, you don't have to believe me. But tomorrow morning, the company will hold a board meeting to discuss Preston Vale. At that time, all the evidence will be placed on the table. Whether you come or not is your choice." "Behind me," Margaret screamed sharply. "Ethan Whitaker. Don't think you can force Evelyn to lower her head like this. The Whitmore family's affairs are not for an outsider like you to manage." The next morning at 9. Whitmore Group conference room. Attorney Evans sat beside me, checking the final details. Richard Cole arrived second. Well prepared. Walter Brooks arrived third. The registry procedures are complete. Leonard Baker arrived last. I knew we were leaving the final spot for Evelyn, Preston, and Margaret. Margaret walked in wearing a deep purple suit, a string of pearls around her neck. "Aunt Margaret, today's meeting is a board meeting. You are not a director, so you cannot attend." Margaret's face changed. "My daughter is the general manager of Whitmore Group. I'm her mother. Why can't I attend?" "Aunt Margaret, those are company rules. Board meetings are limited to directors and necessary staff. Non-director personnel must recuse themselves." Margaret's face flushed red. She opened her mouth, wanting to say something. But Richard interrupted. "Mrs. Whitmore, Mr. Whitaker is right. These are the rules." Richard's voice was gentle, but his tone carried unquestionable firmness. Margaret looked at me, then at Richard, then at everyone else. "Fine. You're all impressive. Ethan Whitaker. Just wait." Then Richard sighed softly. Evelyn walked in. Preston followed behind her. He took the chair beside Evelyn, crossed his legs, and folded his hands over his knee. Only then did Evelyn lift her head and sweep her gaze across the room. "Begin." The first item on today's board agenda concerns a series of abnormal fund expenditures over the past 2 years. The smile on Preston's face faded slightly. From March of last year to October of this year, the company paid project cooperation fees to 4 outside companies, totaling $3.2 million. The 4 companies are Brightline Culture, Vale Media, Farpoint Marketing, and Ever Brand Management. I set down the file and looked at Preston. Mr. Vale, the legal representatives or actual controllers of all 4 companies are you? Preston's expression changed. You investigated me. The 7 projects claimed to include brand promotion, market research, marketing planning, and client maintenance. But none of these projects delivered any actual results. No promotion plans. No research reports. No marketing proposals. No files proving that any service was completed. Mr. Vale, can you explain? Preston did not speak. Evelyn spoke. I signed all of these projects. Are you saying I have a problem too? Ms. Whitmore, you signed them. But did you ever think about what exactly you were signing? Evelyn froze. This is the payment request from last July. Amount, $570,000. Payee, Brightline Culture. The stated reason is brand promotion services. But in the attachments, there is no contract exhibit, no service description, no budget breakdown. According to the company's finance policy, this payment request should never have been approved. I looked at Evelyn. Ms. Whitmore, when you signed it, did you look at any of this? Evelyn's lips moved, but no sound came out. Preston abruptly stood. Ethan Whitaker. Stop slandering people. These projects were legitimate commercial cooperation. Contracts were reviewed by legal. And payments were signed by Ms. Whitmore. You're bringing this up now only to divert attention from the fact that you deceived Ms. Whitmore for 5 years. He turned to Evelyn. Evelyn, don't let him trick you. He is doing all this today to make you feel you made a mistake. To make you unable to hold your head up in the company. He wants to use this to force you to give up the general manager position. Evelyn lifted her head and looked at me. On the photo displayed on the screen, Preston Vale and Charles Mercer sat facing each other in a private restaurant room. Preston's face was clear. He was smiling as he spoke to Charles. Evelyn looked at the screen. The blood drained from her face little by little. She turned her head and looked at Preston. What is this? Preston's face went completely white. The next photo showed Preston and Charles walking out of the restaurant together. Charles's hand resting on Preston's shoulder. This photo was taken 3 months ago. The location was a private club owned by Everstone Group. The father field on the document read Charles Mercer. The mother field showed an unfamiliar name. The child field read Preston Vale. Preston stood there like a statue nailed in place. Evelyn stood and walked up to him. Tell me, are you Charles Mercer's son? Preston's lips trembled violently. Evelyn looked at his silence and nodded slowly. She stared at Preston for a very long time. Ethan Whitaker. When did you know? 1 month ago. Evelyn was silent for a while. Then asked. Why didn't you tell me earlier? Because although we are husband and wife, I always felt like an outsider. Evelyn froze. For 5 years. Although I was your husband, I never truly held a place in your heart. You never discussed your decisions with me. You never considered my opinions. How many times did your mother tell you I was just a husband living off the Whitmore family and shouldn't interfere in Whitmore affairs? Evelyn. It wasn't that I didn't want to tell you. I was afraid that even if I told you, you wouldn't believe me. Evelyn's tears finally fell. Preston looked at that scene and suddenly laughed. How touching. What a devoted couple. Ethan Whitaker. You won. You successfully made everyone think you're the victim. That Evelyn and I wronged you. But don't celebrate too soon. Charles Mercer will not let you go. Evelyn Whitmore. Remember this. You owe me. Evelyn stood there. Tears still falling. Richard and the other directors exchanged glances. Then stood. Quietly gathered their things. And left the conference room. Only Evelyn and I remained. Ethan Whitaker. Am I very stupid? Don't touch me. You're right. I never treated you as my husband. I treated you as someone I could order around at will. Someone who took benefits from my family and should obediently listen. I never thought that you had feelings too. But it's too late to say this now. I'll have my lawyer draft the divorce agreement again. This time, I won't come looking for you again. The light fell on the chair Preston had left empty. Because I saw that Evelyn's seat had something left on it. It was a scarf. The scarf I gave her for her birthday 3 years ago. She had worn it for 3 years and never taken it off. For an entire week. Evelyn did not appear at the company. Her office door stayed locked. Every day. Her assistant placed documents needing signatures outside the door and retrieved them the next day. I poured all my energy into company affairs. The mess Preston left behind was worse than I expected. Those 7 shell companies had not only taken more than $3 million out of Whitmore Group, under the name of Project Cooperation, they had also diverted several of Whitmore's core client resources. Those clients had now all been taken by Everstone Group. Frederick called and said Charles Mercer had put word out in the circle that within 3 months, Whitmore Group would be forced entirely out of the building materials market. Let him come, I said. Inside the company, people were panicking. Rumors said Whitmore's cash flow was about to break, that Preston had transferred away too much money, and that the company's accounts no longer had enough liquidity. Rumors said I was about to be kicked out of Whitmore, that Margaret was working behind the scenes to unite other shareholders and throw me out. Some even said Evelyn and Preston had not truly cut ties, and she was only waiting for the storm to pass before bringing him back. I went to see clients. The clients Preston had diverted. I visited them one by one. Frank Weston had worked with Whitmore for 15 years. Mr. Whitaker. You came. Mr. Weston. I came to ask you one thing. I stood before him and got straight to the point. Whitmore Group has worked with you for 15 years. In all those years, have we ever wronged you? He clearly did not expect me to be so direct. Mr. Whitaker. What are you saying? He rubbed his hands, looking a little embarrassed. Whitmore has always treated me well. When Mr. Whitmore was alive, there was nothing to complain about. Then why did you switch to Everstone? He turned, walked into the shop, took a contract from a drawer, and handed it to me. I glanced at it. It was Everstone Group's supply quote. The prices listed were 20% lower than Whitmore Group's. Mr. Weston. How long did Everstone lock in this price? The contract is for 3 years. This price is locked for all 3 years. I returned the quote and laughed once. Mr. Weston. You've been in the building materials business for 15 years. You should understand one thing. What? A price 20% below market is not a discount. It is a trap. Frank's expression changed. Why is Everstone using such low prices to steal clients? Not to make money. To squeeze Whitmore Group to death. Once Whitmore collapses, Everstone will have no competitors in the building materials market. At that time, do you think they'll continue giving you this price? He took out a cigarette from a pack but did not light it, only turning it between his fingers. Mr. Whitaker. You're right. But I have no choice. The market is bad. Margins are thin. If I can save a little, I'll save a little. Mr. Weston. I'll make you a promise. Whitmore's prices stay the same. But we can provide more flexible settlement terms, shorter supply cycles, faster after-sales service. And Whitmore has been in this industry for 20 years. Our brand, our quality, our reputation. Those are things Everstone can never buy with low prices. Then he put the cigarette back into the pack, stood, and extended his hand. Mr. Whitaker. Just based on what you said today, I'll sign with you. I gripped his hand firmly. The second client was Joe Carson at the Southside Building Materials Wholesale Market. Joe was in his early 40s, broad-shouldered, with a voice like thunder. When I arrived at his shop, he was unloading goods with workers. Seeing me, he dusted off his hands and came over. Mr. Whitaker. What wind blew you here? His laugh was loud enough to make my eardrums buzz. Mr. Carson. I came to ask why you switched to Everstone. Joe's smile faded slightly. He pulled over 2 chairs, handed one to me, and sat on the other. Mr. Whitaker. Since you asked, I'll be honest. He took a business card from his pocket and handed it to me. The card had Preston Vale's name and phone number printed on it. Preston Vale came to see me 2 months ago. He said Whitmore Group had major internal problems and was about to go bankrupt. He said he was the person Ms. Whitmore trusted most and told me to move my goods to Everstone quickly. Otherwise, if Whitmore collapsed, I wouldn't get paid. Joe sighed. Mr. Whitaker. You know small businesses like ours fear bad receivables most. When he said that, I panicked and quickly signed with Everstone. I placed the card in my pocket and looked at Joe. Mr. Carson. Preston Vale has been removed from Whitmore Group. Nothing he said was true. Whitmore Group will not collapse. Ethan Whitaker. Guarantee it. Joe looked at me. Hesitation in his eyes. Mr. Whitaker. That sounds easy. But my goods have already moved to Everstone. And I signed the contract. If you want me to come back now, how am I supposed to explain it to Everstone? I stood and looked at him. Mr. Carson. You don't need to explain. Continue performing the contract with Everstone. But Whitmore Group's door will always be open to you. If you're willing. We can supply first. With payment due 3 months later. Supply first. Pay 3 months later. Mr. Whitaker. Are you joking? I'm not. But there is one condition. What condition? Within 3 months. If you feel Whitmore's product and service are worse than Everstone's, you can terminate cooperation anytime and pay nothing. But if you believe we're better than Everstone, I hope you'll terminate your contract with Everstone and transfer all orders back to Whitmore. Then he stood and burst into laughter. The laugh echoed through the shop, shaking dust down from the beams. Mr. Whitaker. You're an interesting man. He reached out and slapped my shoulder. The force was so strong it numbed my arm. Just based on your guts. I'm in. 3rd client. 4th client. 5th client. I ran from one to another. Some clients were persuaded and signed new supply agreements on the spot. Some were still hesitating. But their attitudes visibly softened. There were also several clients who refused to turn back no matter what. Everstone's prices were too low. And they could not let go. I simply left my business card on their desks and said one thing. Whitmore Group's door is always open to you. Over 1 week. I visited 23 clients. I recovered only 16. The remaining 7 stayed temporarily with Everstone. But I knew this was already the best possible outcome. Frederick called me. Surprise in his tone. Ethan. How did you do it? Everyone in the circle is saying Whitmore Group's Mr. Whitaker went door to door visiting clients. Humble as a salesman. Uncle Frederick. It wasn't humility. It was sincerity. These clients have worked with Whitmore for more than 10 years. It's not that they don't trust Whitmore. They were frightened by Preston Vale. I only needed to let them know that someone at Whitmore is still holding the company up. Then they would come back. Then he said one sentence. Ethan. Robert did not choose wrong. The people inside the company slowly steadied as well. After I recovered client after client, the rumors gradually faded. The finance department reorganized the accounts and began pursuing the money Preston had transferred out. One transaction at a time. Progress was slow. But at least there was direction. On behalf of Whitmore Group, Attorney Evans filed a lawsuit accusing Preston Vale of embezzlement. The case was still being heard. But the evidence was solid. And the chance of victory was high. Everything was moving in a better direction. Except Evelyn. She still had not appeared at the company. Some employees said they saw her shopping alone at an East Side mall, carrying several shopping bags. Others said they saw her coming out of a law firm, holding a document with red eyes. Everyone has their own way of digesting pain. Her way was to hide herself. My way was to throw all my energy into work. Until that night, when I received a call from Margaret. When the call connected, I was about to leave the company. Most of the hallway lights had been turned off. Only my office remained lit. Margaret's voice came through the phone, choked with tears. Ethan Whitaker. Are you satisfied now? Her voice was sharp and trembling, like she was crying and cursing at the same time. Evelyn has locked herself in her room for 3 days. She hasn't eaten or drunk anything. I knock. And she won't open. I call. And she won't answer. This is all your fault. All yours. Aunt Margaret. Don't panic. I'm coming right now. After hanging up, I grabbed my coat and rushed out of the office. On the drive to Margaret's villa, I pushed the accelerator to the floor. Evelyn's face flashed repeatedly in my mind. The way she had stood in the conference room with tears falling. The way she had turned her back on me at the top of the stairs and said, "Leave." The way she left that scarf on the chair. I stopped the car outside the villa, rushed up, and rang the doorbell. Margaret opened the door. Her makeup was ruined from crying. Eyeliner smudged, making her look disheveled and desperate. When she saw me, her lips trembled as if she wanted to say something. But not a single word came out. I ignored her and charged straight upstairs. Evelyn's bedroom door was locked. Evelyn. It's me. I knocked twice more. Harder this time. Evelyn. Open the door. It's me. My heart sank. I stepped back 2 paces and rammed my shoulder into the door. The first time. The door shook but did not open. The second time. I used all my strength. The lock broke. The door swung open and slammed against the wall with a loud bang. The room was pitch black. The curtains were tightly closed, not letting in a single sliver of light. The air was heavy and stagnant. Suffocating. Evelyn lay on the bed, curled into a ball like a wounded little animal. Her hair was scattered across the pillow, and there was not a trace of color in her face. On the bedside table was an empty pill bottle. I rushed over and grabbed it. Sleeping pills. I threw back the covers and lifted Evelyn up. Her body was limp, with no response. She was very light, much lighter than the last time I had carried her. I carried her out of the room and down the stairs. At the staircase, Margaret saw me carrying Evelyn down. Her legs went weak, and she collapsed to the floor. Evelyn. Evelyn. What happened to you? Her scream tore through the empty villa. I ignored her, carried Evelyn out the door, and placed her in the back seat. Then I got into the driver's seat and started the car. The tires rolled over the asphalt with a low roar. As I drove, I kept looking at Evelyn through the rearview mirror. She lay in the back seat, motionless. Only one thought remained in my mind. Do not let anything happen to her. When we reached the hospital, I carried her into the emergency room. The nurse on duty saw Evelyn in my arms and immediately pushed over a gurney. I placed her on it, and the nurse pushed her toward the emergency room. I followed a few steps before another nurse stopped me. Family members wait outside. The emergency room doors closed in front of me. That white door separated Evelyn and me into 2 different worlds. I stood in the hallway, gasping. Not because I was tired, because I was terrified. That fear seeped out from between my bones, cold and fine, crawling over my whole body. I sat down on the bench in the corridor, hands braced on my knees, head lowered. A middle-aged female doctor came out and removed her mask. I stood, my legs weak, almost unable to hold myself up. Doctor. How is she? My voice was so hoarse it did not sound like mine. We pumped her stomach. Her vital signs are stable. Fortunately, she arrived in time. 2 hours later. And it would have been hard to say, "Thank you, doctor." The doctor glanced at me, as if she wanted to say something, then turned and left. The nurse pushed Evelyn out and transferred her to a regular ward. I followed behind, looking at the curled-up figure on the gurney. She had not woken yet. Her brows were slightly furrowed, like she was trapped in a bad dream. Time passed second by second. When the first morning light came in, Evelyn's lashes moved. Then focus slowly returned to her eyes. Why am I here? I stood and poured her a cup of warm water. She did not drink. She only looked at me. You took sleeping pills. How many? Most of the bottle. I wasn't trying to die. I just wanted to sleep. I couldn't sleep. So I took one. Still couldn't sleep. So I took another. Then somehow, I took so many. She turned her head to look at me. Ethan Whitaker. Am I useless? I wanted to say something, but did not know what to say. She continued by herself. After that board meeting, every day I thought about one thing. What exactly did I do? I treated Preston Vale as my confidant and handed him the company's most important decisions. I treated your shares as my own and tried to transfer them to whoever I wanted. I treated you as an outsider, thinking that because you had taken benefits from the Whitmore family, you should obediently listen to me. Her voice grew softer and softer until it was almost a murmur. I ruined everything. If my father were still alive, he would be so disappointed in me. Tears slid from the corners of her eyes, down her cheeks, and into her ears. She did not wipe them away. She simply let them fall. I reached out and held her hand. Her hand was cold. Her fingers were thin, trembling slightly in my palm. This time, she did not pull away. Your father wouldn't be disappointed. She looked at me, confusion in her eyes. When your father chose you as his heir, it wasn't because he thought you were so capable. It was because he loved you. Evelyn's tears fell harder. He knew you had been spoiled since childhood. He knew you were impulsive and acted without thinking. He was afraid that after he was gone, You wouldn't be able to hold up Whitmore alone. That's why he had me marry you and guard this family business for you. He didn't distrust you. He was worried about you. I tightened my grip on her hand. Your father never intended for you to carry everything alone. He left you a fallback. That fallback was me. Evelyn looked at me, her lips trembling. She wanted to say something, but sobs blocked her throat, and no sound came out. Her voice was hoarse, choked with tears. Ethan Whitaker. I'm sorry. Those 3 words took all her strength to say. Evelyn stayed in the hospital for 3 days. During those 3 days, I went to the company during the day to handle affairs and came to the hospital at night to stay with her. Margaret came several times. Every time she arrived, her eyes were red. Her attitude toward me changed. Once, when she came, I was peeling an apple for Evelyn. I heard her sigh softly in the hallway. 3 days later, Evelyn was discharged. She did not return to Margaret's villa. She went back to our own home. The house we chose together when we married. The living room was exactly as it had been when she left. The magazine she had not finished reading still lay on the coffee table. The blanket she often used was still draped over the arm of the sofa. Only a thin layer of dust had settled over everything. How long was I gone? Half a month. She walked into the living room, picked up the blanket, shook off the dust, folded it, and placed it neatly on the sofa. Her movements were slow and light, as if arranging something precious. I stood in the entryway and watched her. She turned to me. Ethan Whitaker. Can I ask you something? Why did you save me? That night. You could have chosen not to come. You could have left me to live or die on my own. Because I promised your father, no matter what happened, I would take good care of you. Evelyn nodded and lowered her eyes. Her lashes cast 2 small shadows on her cheeks. Just because of that, I walked over and stood before her. Not only because of that, also because I stopped. Those words had been blocked in my heart for 5 years, never spoken. Now that I was about to say them, I did not know where to begin. Evelyn looked at me and suddenly smiled. It was the first smile I had seen from her in half a month. Very faint, like the last leaf hanging from a branch in late autumn. If you don't say it, I know. Ethan Whitaker. I want to discuss something with you. Her voice was calm, but carried a firmness I had never heard before. What? I want to resign as general manager of Whitmore Group. She turned and looked at me. Her voice was very clear. During these days in the hospital, I thought about a lot. I truly am not suited to manage the company. My father's worries were right. I'm too easily influenced. Too willing to trust people I shouldn't. Too likely to make emotional decisions. If I continue sitting in that position, I'll only bring Whitmore more trouble. She walked up to me and raised her head. So I want to give the general manager position to you. You're more suitable than I am. But I have one condition. What condition? Let me stay in the company and start at the bottom. I want to learn from the beginning. Learn how to manage. How to make decisions. How to judge whether a person is worth trusting. I don't want to be Robert Whitmore's daughter forever. I want to be Evelyn Whitmore. That was a desire to prove herself. Okay. Evelyn smiled. This smile was a little wider than before. The corners of her mouth lifting and pulling at the corners of her eyes. It was not happiness. Not relief. It was something more complicated. Evelyn did what she said. The next day, she formally submitted her resignation to the board. The board approved it. Then they appointed me as the new general manager. When the appointment passed, Richard Cole led the applause. Walter Brooks and Leonard Baker followed. Evelyn sat in the corner and applauded too. She did not look at me, but there was a faint smile at the corner of her mouth. After the appointment, Evelyn was transferred to the marketing department and started as a basic sales representative. The marketing manager was troubled, unsure what kind of work he should assign to the former general manager. Evelyn said directly, "Give me the most basic work. Whatever everyone else does, I'll do." Every morning, she was the first to arrive and the last to leave. She wore the company's uniform and visited clients with her coworkers. Clients made things difficult for her. Clients scolded her. Clients left her waiting in hallways for an hour. She never complained. When she saw me, she smiled. "Good morning, Mr. Whitaker." There was a lightness in her voice that had never been there before. I did not know when the corner of my mouth lifted too. Everything in the company slowly improved. The court issued judgment in the case against Preston. Embezzlement was established. He was sentenced to 3 years in prison. Suspended for 4 years. The shell companies under his name were sealed. And part of the funds were recovered. Preston stated in court that he would not appeal. I heard that after the judgment. He came out of the courthouse and was picked up by Charles Mercer's secretary. After that, no one saw him again. Charles Mercer also quieted down. Everstone Group's low-price client-grabbing strategy was greatly weakened because Whitmore's clients returned in large numbers. Charles put word out in the circle that Whitmore would not survive the end of the year. But by year-end, Whitmore's performance not only did not decline, it grew 12% compared with the same period last year. We won that hard battle. Frederick laughed on the phone and said, "Ethan, now when Charles Mercer mentions you, I hear he grinds his teeth." But I knew Charles Mercer would not give up. He was only lying low temporarily, waiting for the next opportunity. Whenever he came again, I would meet him. On the last day of the year, the shareholders' meeting was held at Riverfront Tower. Unlike the last time, the atmosphere in the conference room was relaxed. Everyone's face carried a smile. Across from me sat Richard Cole, flipping through the report and nodding from time to time. Walter Brooks sat beside him, holding a cup of tea. The scent of tea drifted through the conference room. Leonard Baker sat in the corner, a laptop in front of him, video calling his son in Sydney. His son waved at him through the screen, smiling brightly. The door opened, and Evelyn walked in. She wore a navy blue business suit, her hair tied into a low ponytail, and a file in her hand. She walked to the end of the long table and sat in the seat closest to the door. That was the seat for ordinary marketing staff. Richard looked at her and opened his mouth, wanting to say something. Evelyn smiled at him and shook her head. Richard swallowed his words. Once everyone arrived, I stood and began the report. This year's performance. This year's profit. This year's client growth. Every number was better than last year. When I finished, applause sounded in the conference room. Richard stood and added a few words. He said Whitmore Group had passed through its hardest period and would only get better from here. He became emotional as he spoke. By the end, his voice was slightly choked. Leonard turned his laptop so that his son could clap along on video. The atmosphere was good and relaxed, like the sea finally calming after a storm. As the meeting neared its end, Evelyn stood. She walked to the front of the conference room and stood beside me. In her hand was a document. I noticed her fingers trembling slightly. Shareholders, I'd like to take a few minutes of your time. Evelyn opened the file and placed it on the table. It was a share transfer agreement. She pointed to the terms and said each word clearly. I currently still hold 8% of Whitmore Group's shares. This 8% was originally left by my father to my mother, and my mother later transferred it to me. Today, I have decided to transfer all 8% of these shares to Ethan Whitaker. The conference room went silent. Even the hum of the air conditioning became clear. Richard set down his teacup. The cup touched the saucer with a crisp sound. Walter lifted his head and looked at me, then at Evelyn. Leonard's mouth opened wide and did not close for a long time. I turned and looked at Evelyn. She was looking at me too. Her eyes were very calm. But beneath that calm was something I had never seen before. It was release and determination. Evelyn. I began. But she interrupted me. Let me finish. Her voice was light, but firm. This 8% is what I owe you. She looked at me and spoke slowly. 5 years ago, you saved my father. My father repaid you with shares. 3 years ago, after my father passed away, I never truly treated those shares as yours. I always thought they were Whitmore family property. Something I had given you. Something I could take back whenever I wanted. I was wrong. She lowered her head and remained silent for a moment. Then she raised her head again and looked at me. This year, I saw everything you did for the company. You visited clients one by one and brought back the customers Preston deceived away. You led the legal team and recovered the transferred funds transaction by transaction. You were the first to arrive every day and the last to leave. You never complained once. You did everything I failed to do. Her voice trembled slightly. But she did not cry. She took a deep breath and continued. This 8% isn't much. But it is the only thing I can take out. I want to use it to thank you. Thank you for not giving up on Whitmore. Thank you for not giving up on me. The conference room was silent for a long time. Then Richard stood and began to applaud. Walter stood too. Leonard also stood. The three of them stood there clapping. And no one spoke. Evelyn turned to look at me. She pushed the agreement in front of me, picked up a pen, and handed it to me. I accepted the pen and looked at the agreement. Black words on white paper. Clear terms. All 8% of her shares would be transferred to Ethan Whitaker for no compensation. I did not sign. I set down the pen, closed the agreement, and pushed it back to Evelyn. Evelyn froze. Everyone froze. I looked at Evelyn and spoke. I won't take these shares. Evelyn's expression changed. Why? Her voice carried confusion and a trace of hurt. I looked at her and slowly said, because these 8% shares came from your father. What your father left you was not merely shares. It was confidence. Evelyn's lips moved. But no sound came out. I continued. This year. You worked in the marketing department from the bottom. Clients scolded you. Co-workers made things difficult. People watched you like a joke. You never backed down. You have already proven yourself. You don't need to give me shares to prove you're grateful. Evelyn looked at me. Her eyes red. I picked up the agreement and, in front of everyone, slowly tore it in half. The torn pieces fell onto the table with soft sounds. Keep these shares yourself. I said. You are no longer the general manager who couldn't even understand a payment request. You are a qualified sales representative. In the future, when you become a qualified department manager, then a qualified vice president, you will thank yourself for keeping these shares today. Evelyn's tears fell. But she was smiling. Tears and smile mixed together. It looked strange, but beautiful. She lifted her hand and wiped her tears. In the conference room, Richard, Walter, and Leonard stood quietly. No one spoke. No one broke the silence of that moment. After the meeting, everyone left one after another. I stood at the entrance of Riverfront Tower, looking at the river view outside. Wind blew over, carrying the damp scent of river water and the unique chill of winter. Evelyn walked to my side and stood there for a long time. She did not speak. She only stood beside me, looking at the river. After a long while, she spoke. Ethan Whitaker. Do you remember the first time we met? I nodded. She continued. It was at my father's birthday dinner. I was wearing a white dress. You were standing in the corner, holding a glass of wine, ignoring everyone. I walked over and said, so you're the Ethan Whitaker my dad keeps talking about. You're actually pretty decent looking. She smiled. The smile was very light, like dandelion seeds scattered by wind. I looked at her and suddenly remembered that night 5 years ago. 23-year-old Evelyn wore a white dress and smiled without a care in the world. She leaned close and said, don't be nervous. I'm easy to get along with. Back then, when she smiled, her eyes curved like crescents. 5 years had passed. She had changed a lot. Her smile was no longer careless. It now carried a settled gentleness. Her eyes no longer held that naive light. Instead, they carried the firmness of someone who had weathered storms. Her face was no longer so young. There were faint lines at the corners of her eyes. But I thought she looked more beautiful than ever. Evelyn turned and looked at me. Sunlight fell across her face, wrapping her whole body in light. Ethan Whitaker. I have a question for you, she said. I looked at her and waited. You married me back then because of my father's arrangement. But later, when you were good to me, was it because of my father's request? Or because? She stopped. Those eyes looked at me, waiting for an answer. I looked into her eyes for a long time. Then I spoke. At the beginning, it was because of your father. Evelyn's eyes dimmed. I continued. But later, it wasn't. She lifted her head and looked at me. I reached out and brushed the hair the wind had blown across her forehead behind her ear. My fingers touched her cheek. Her skin was cool and slightly reddened by the river wind. Later, it was because of you, I said. Evelyn's eyes reddened again. But she did not cry. She only looked at me. Then smiled. That smile was like the first sliver of sunlight slipping into winter. Faint. Warm. Real. The river wind blew over, messing up her hair. She reached out, took my hand from her cheek, and held it in her palm. Her hand was cold, but she held on tightly. We stood like that at the entrance of Riverfront Tower, watching the river flow slowly. The distant city glittered in the sunlight, like a warm ocean. After a long time, her voice sounded softly. Ethan Whitaker. Let's start over. I turned and looked at her. She did not look at me. She only looked at the river. Sunlight shattered into stars in her eyes. I tightened my grip on her hand. Okay, I said. The river wind blew past, carrying away the last trace of winter's cold. Spring was almost here. That's all for today's story. Remember to subscribe and leave a comment.